Let's talk about Cronenberg's The Shrouds, which is one of those movies that I've been wanting to watch for quite some time now. I finally get to watch it thanks to the Overlook Film Festival where it was playing. It's now released wider, so you're able to watch it, but I just been sitting on talking about it for a bit now, but I definitely do want to get my thoughts out. So this is going to be more of an explanation, my interpretation. No one's saying that this is right, and no one's saying that this is the only way to view the movie. This is just my way of viewing the movie. Maybe it's not even the way Cronenberg intended to view the movie, but I think that art, like anything, once it's given out to the people can talk about whatever they want, right? So before we get into it, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. We are trying to now go to our next goal of 50,000 subscribers. So we hit 40,000. Thank you so much to everybody who has subscribed, watched videos, liked, shared, all of that. Even if you hate my videos, you gave them a chance, and I appreciate that. But let's talk about The Shrouds now, which is the latest Cronenberg film, in which he calls this one maybe his most autobiographical, although it's not necessarily an autobiography for him. But Vincent Cassel with some sunglasses truly looks like Cronenberg here. But let's get into it. A bit of background about this movie is that Cronenberg does talk about the death of his wife in real life sort of being an inspiration or jumping point for this film. In this film, we have a character played by Vincent Cassel named Karsh, who has invented Grave Tech, which is a tombstone that broadcasts a live interactive 3D image of a deceased, decomposing corpse. He uses this to view his wife Becca, who died from cancer. Now, the other characters in this film include characters such as Becca's sister, Terry, and also Guy Pearce playing Maury, who is Terry's ex-husband. And Terry and Becca are played by Diane Kruger both, so this is a dual role here for her as well. And she also plays the voice of an AI assistant to Karsh named Honey. You also have Sandrine Holt here as Zumin Zavo, who is this wealthy woman with a wealthy husband who wants to bring Gravetech to Budapest. So basically what this movie revolves around is one day Gravetech gets ravaged and Karsh is trying to find out who did this, alongside with Maury, who has helped him with the technology, and Terry is trying to come up with conspiracies. Terry really loves conspiracies, and she's trying to figure out what happened to her sister's grave as well. So the whole film revolves around that, right? And throughout the film, we see that Karsh goes through many conspiracies of who could have done this. Maybe it's the Russians, maybe it's the Chinese. Let's get into what exactly happened here. So Karsh invents Grave Tech, and he has Becca buried in one of the shrouds, so he's able to view her body and be able to feel closer to her. At the same time, he also has a close relationship with Becca's identical sister, Terry, and he has these really weird dreams of Becca returning back from Dr. Jerry Eckler's office every time she gets a new treatment, but she's increasingly weak and amputated more, and he's sort of viewing her as her body being sort of desecrated by the doctor. Now, one day, however, we do see that Gravetech Cemetery is destroyed, including Becca's, and that the technology's network has now been encrypted by hackers, so the shrouds cannot be viewable by the paying customers. We see that he tries to get help from Maury, who actually helped decode Gravetech security and also created the virtual assistant that he uses, Honey, in Becca's image. So we see that Karsh isn't really over his wife at all, and he's trying to make a sort of like stand that he is, and that this grave tech technology is helping him get over her death, because he's able to see her body, and sort of that mystery and that fear of death is gone because he can see exactly what's going on, right? But now that the grave tech and the technology has been messed with, it sends Karsh spiraling down this very bad rabbit hole and wondering who exactly could be behind this. And we see that Maury is trying to help him. And at the same time, they also notice there's some strange protrusions on her bones, and Karsh believes they were caused maybe by the people that were treating Becca and the cancer and all of that. So he's down two conspiracies now. What is going on with Becca's body, and who could have done this to Gravetech? And at the same time, you throw on top of this that Sue Min, who is the blind wife of a CEO, wants to sponsor Gravetech to come to Budapest, and then he just starts sleeping with her. So you pretty much see that Karsh is just like spiraling, trying to sort of deal with everything that's happening. Also, on top of all of this, we see that Karsh and Terry kind of get a little bit of relationship going, because Terry starts to get aroused by Karsh talking about conspiracies and what happened with Gravetech and the whole thing with Sue Min and stuff like that. So Karsh is juggling a lot of things here, but at the core of it, he is not dealing with what is actually causing all of these things for him, and that is that his wife did die, as we see at the beginning. That is a haunting memory he has that's plaguing him throughout. And I really do love how the Shrouds showcases how as humans, how as people, we sort of try to cloud the harsh truth of reality with these absurd and these like insanely elaborate like conspiracies or like situations we get into, right? Because it keeps us sort of distracted from the truth. Eventually, we see Karsh starts to learn that none of these hacks really came from anywhere, and even finds that Honey's code has been unstable for some time now, as we see it even starts to taunt him as well. And this makes Karsh feel a little bit like, could it actually be somebody else closer to me messing with him? Well, this pretty much gets confirmed right away after Terry shows a video that she took of Maury, who is jealous of Karsh and the relationship that he has with Terry, and has caused his schizophrenia to surface. And he claims that he has been in full control of Honey and has been behind the attack on Gravetech as well. Maury then calls Karsh into the woods to show him something, which is that he has lost his 2 fingers. Maury claims to Karsh that he has been attacked by the people behind the Gravetech hack and that he is trying to be used as a mole. He says they were torturing him and that they took 2 of his fingers, but we quickly see Karsh isn't really buying it, but he kind of is. But then Terry like confirms it. No, you know what? Maury lost those 2 fingers in high school, but he's been hiding it from everyone. And indeed, if you go back to the beginning of the film like I did after the movie ended, Maury never had those 2 fingers and he was just hiding it. So he is just making everything up. We later see that Gravetech's network is brought back online and that the tombstones are now repaired. A doctor who has been examining the protrusions on Becca's body tells Karsh that they were just artificial and just implanted there through technology, sort of like a deep fake of sorts. And we can kind of attribute that probably Maury did this to mess with Karsh, since he was very pissed at Karsh for getting close to Terry. Later that night, however, Karsh is shocked to find that Eckler's murdered body is buried next to Becca, and Terry theorizes about what could have happened to put Eckler there. Karsh then tells Terry, what if I hired a hitman to kill and bury Eckler there? And we pretty much see Terry becomes aroused by this idea, and they seem to get intimate that night as well. The next morning, we see that now that Becca has someone to keep her company in death, Karsh is okay with giving up the spot he was going to have next to Becca, and he flies off with Sumin on a jet to Budapest. They kiss, and then suddenly she appears as Becca with the scars, speaking in her voice and offering to be buried with him in Budapest, which he accepts ultimately. So what the hell just happened in this film? Okay, so we got to take it back a little bit, right? So what happened with the hack on Gravetech? So I, in my opinion, think that, of course, it was Maury who did all of this. Maury, I think, was just angered at the fact of Karsh and Terry hanging out, because Maury and Terry were married at a point, then they were separated, and I think we see that Maury descended into madness of sorts. His schizophrenia rose up as well, and he was inventing these elaborate ideas of what happened in order to get closer to Karsh and in a way closer to Terry. But at the same time, he just wanted to spite Karsh for everything he has done and sort of see him crumble under all of this technology that Karsh felt that he was on top of all this time. And I think that Karsh himself sort of knew there was something happening close to him, but the idea that it could have been Russian or could have been a Chinese hack or it was somebody else like Dr. Jerry Eckler trying to mess with him sort of gave Karsh that feeling of he can like stop thinking about Becca and think about other things like that, because these very elaborate, very intricate, and very convoluted ideas and conspiracies were easier to really get distracted by than the harsh truth that his wife is dead in that plot of land and she's not going to get out of that land, right? And I think that's what the movie at its core is talking about, is this sort of idea that we try our best to be distracted, whether it's conspiracies, whether it's technology, we try to detach and not be there, right? Fully in our feelings and thinking about what exactly happened, because at its core, the Shrouds is about a man who is grieving his wife, who he feels was more and more detached from him as her sickness spread, as she went into these treatments, as she was getting treated by this doctor. And he sort of had a jealousy towards the doctor because the doctor was more, in his eyes, with his wife Becca and was there like sort of towards the end of her life, and he really wasn't. And I think that's why we see that he has this sort of resentment and this anger towards Dr. Jerry Eckler when he speaks about him. Now, with the ending of the film of who buried Eckler into that plot of land, I think there's a lot of interesting theories that float around. But what if indeed Karsh is telling the truth? This was all an elaborate idea so he can feel that he can move on with his life, because he quote unquote gave Becca what she wanted, right? He gave her Eckler to be there with her, but it's never explicitly said that Becca did indeed sleep with Eckler throughout her treatment or before all of that when she was with Karsh. Of course, it is said that they were together at a point before Karsh, but it's never implied that it was after or during her treatment. So maybe, just maybe, Karsh made this all up in his head in order to feel better that he wants to move on from his wife and pursue Sumin, and burying Eckler there and sort of making himself believe that the idea that Eckler and Becca were doing something behind his back gave him a little bit more of a push to be like, well, they were doing that, I believe, and now he's buried with her, so they can be together forever, so I can be okay with moving on. But we quickly see at the end that that is not indeed what happens in Karsh's mind. He still feels that guilt of moving on from his wife, and I think it's something that maybe Cronenberg's trying to talk about here, is this sort of guilt of moving on when a loved one passes away, and you feel this sort of immense like sadness that you are sort of leaving them behind now, and they just become a memory of sorts. They're not there no more. And I think with grave tech as well, and the technology not being there to view his wife, even though at the beginning he wanted to, but then maybe he realized this was not helping him move on, so he invents these elaborate ideas, these elaborate schemes that happen where grave technology gets disrupted and all that, and throughout that moment he's able to sleep around with these multiple different women. And it's just more sad when you think about it that he has to go to these lengths in order to be able to sort of move forward. But is he really moving forward if that's the only way he can really like do anything else in his life, is by making up these hoaxes, these conspiracies, these elaborate ideas that really aren't there, but he feels like they're real. So overall, in the end, Karsh kind of had an idea what was going on here. He knew these conspiracies really didn't have weight, and I think that he was really trying to just get over Becca as best as he could, even if that meant making up scenarios in his head to make it better when he decided to seemingly move on, sort of pursuing a relationship with Sumin, which he tries to do. But we quickly see it's not going to happen, because when he sees Sumin, he sees Becca, and Becca will always be a part of Karsh's life. No matter how hard it is for him to sort of overcome it and try to move forward with his life, she's always a part of him. And I think that's something that Karsh has to deal with and tackle his grief head on. That is how you express your grief and the loss of someone so important, but Karsh seemingly can't do that. And I think a lot of what the Shrouds talks about is escapism and trying to sort of get away from it all through technology, through conspiracies, and just how deep down a rabbit hole one can get when they're dealing with something so heavy as death. And I really do love how Cronenberg presents this in the Shrouds, and there's more things to talk about, but that's just my interpretation of the conspiracy of it all and the technology. Let me know what you thought about the film and the whole theme of conspiracies and technology in this film, which I do love how Cronenberg presents them. I may be wrong in my thoughts and explanation of it, but that's what we're here for, to have a discussion. So if there's anything else you want to discuss about it, comment it down below, let me know. But as always, that's going to do it for me. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and notification bell. We're on the road to 50,000 subscribers. Thank you for 40,000 subscribers. Really happy about that. And I'll see all of you next time. As always, stay safe, stay positive.